for being here. You could be anywhere, and you chose to be here. This is Lily, and this is Affirming Self. Today, we're talking about something most people avoid, misunderstand, or feel intimidated by. And yet, it's one of the most transformative things God uses to shape us: accountability. Not the shame-heavy kind we learned growing up. Not the harsh, punishing version people are afraid of, but the grounded, holy, identity-rooted kind that actually brings peace. Today, we're going to talk about accountability with God, with yourself, and with the people around you. And we're going to do it in a way that feels gentle, feminine, wise, and grounded. Because accountability is not about being perfect. It's about being present. And to start, I want to take you back to childhood, because that's where the pattern began. When I think about accountability and responsibility, I'm always brought back to childhood. Because the way we show up today, the way we respond to mistakes, to pressure, to expectations, it all has roots. Growing up, I was raised in a loving home. My parents were stable, kind, generous, and at the same time, there were very real wounds from my earliest years in the orphanage that shaped the way I interpreted everything, even love. One moment stands out so clearly. I had this little blankie I carried everywhere, over my shoulder, thumb in my mouth, just doing my thing. One day, I walked past these beautiful blue and white antique plates that hung in the kitchen. And without meaning to, I bumped them. One fell. It broke. And I froze. Then I ran. Not because anyone yelled, not because I was in danger, but because something deep in me believed if you made a mistake, you have to hide. My mom eventually found the plate, and then she found me, and she wasn't angry. She wasn't harsh. She was gentle and curious and loving. She just asked why I ran. And I didn't have words for it, but she knew. This happened again when I fell off a swing and cut my lip. I ran and hid. Not because anyone was upset, but because I somehow believed that getting hurt meant I did something wrong. Looking back now, I can see the pattern so clearly. Any time something went wrong, whether I caused it or life just happened, my instinct was to hide. And avoidance, became its own form of self-protection. And while that makes sense for a little girl who didn't yet understand love, it didn't stay in childhood. It followed me. As I grew older, that instinct to hide didn't disappear. It just got more sophisticated. I became really good at looking put together, really good at performing, really good at navigating emotions without actually feeling them. And then, years later, something happened that I didn't expect. Something simple and yet deeply holy in its own way. I was in a personal development program, and one of the exercises was to stand in front of a mirror and just say one sentence. Hello, how are you? It sounds so small, so simple, so harmless. But when I looked into my own eyes, I realized I had never really seen myself. I had looked at my face before, the way anyone looks in a mirror, but I had never actually met the woman behind my own eyes. And when I did, I broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. It felt like the Lord himself placed his hand under my chin and whispered, "Look, see who I see? See who I created? Stop running from yourself." Looking back at that time, I realized just how afraid I was in that moment, because the reality of it was the mask that I thought I was wearing actually fell off because I saw what everybody else saw. And suddenly the verse in James, the one about looking in a mirror and forgetting who you are, it made sense. It wasn't metaphorical. It was my life. I had been forgetting myself for years, avoiding myself, avoiding truth, avoiding responsibility. The mirror moment changed me. It became this sacred grounding practice, a way of bringing myself back into presence and back into alignment with God. Because here's what I learned. Every time I avoid something, I drift from the woman God is forming me into. Every time I run, I forget who I am. Accountability, real accountability, calls you back into remembrance, calls you back into truth, back into identity, back into God's heart for you. And I've returned to that mirror exercise over and over because it reminds me of this. Being present with yourself is part of being present with God. Being present with yourself is part of being present with God. Even after that mirror moment, the old wiring didn't magically disappear. Avoidance had been my survival strategy for so long that it followed me into adulthood, especially into the workplace. And it showed up in ways that looked responsible on the outside, but internally, I was constantly bracing for danger. If my supervisor emailed me, my body would tense. I'd assume I did something wrong. If someone asked a clarifying question, I'd feel panicked. If there was conflict, I'd shut down. If I needed help, I didn't ask because the story inside me still whispered, if you mess up, you lose love. If someone's disappointed, you lose safety. I feel like that's such a big line. I'm going to just repeat it. If you mess up, you lose love. If someone's disappointed, you lose safety. That was the story inside me that whispered that. From the outside, it might have looked like I wasn't advocating for myself, or like I wasn't confident, or like I wasn't being overly sensitive. But God knew the truth. And eventually, He showed me. And eventually, He showed me. One day, after yet another moment of spiraling over an email, I prayed Psalm 139. Search me, O God, and show me what I'm not seeing. There's a song that reminds me of the verse. I think it was from some worship pastors. Either they wrote it or they sang this song. But search my soul, ever behold how I love you. Search me, know me, try me, see if there be any wicked way in me. I wasn't really expecting that. However, going back to the search me, O God, and show me what I'm not seeing, that was huge. Because in that prayer, in that vulnerable space, God peeled back the layers. He let me see what He'd been trying to show me for years. I wasn't irresponsible. I was afraid. Fear had been masquerading as avoidance. Avoidance had been masquerading as irresponsibility. And shame had been masquerading as I need to hide. I didn't need punishment. I needed presence. Not perfection, but presence. And the Lord, in His kindness, invited me into something new. Not instantly, not overwhelmingly, but slowly, patiently, the way a father teaches a child to walk again. So, I started small, tiny little shifts. These tiny little moments where I chose to stay instead of run. Responding to emails instead of disappearing. Asking clarifying questions instead of assuming the worst. Owning my mistakes without collapsing into shame. Repairing without spiraling. Staying present without trying to perform. And slowly, over time, something beautiful happened. Responsibility stopped feeling like danger. It started feeling like dignity. I just need to say that again. Responsibility stopped feeling like danger. It started feeling like dignity. It wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about being aligned with God, with truth, with how He created me to be. And for the first time, I wasn't responding from fear. I was responding from identity. So, with all of that in mind, childhood, avoidance, the mirror, realignment, let's talk about what accountability actually is. Because for so many of us, accountability has been confused with punishment or shame or perfection. But accountability, the way God designed it, is not a weapon. It's a gift. Let's break this down gently. Accountability with God is not Him standing over you with a clipboard, waiting for you to mess up. It's Him inviting you into alignment again and again, through truth, through presence, through love. In Psalm 139, David prays, "Search me, know my heart, reveal what I can't see." It's not a fearful request. It's an intimate one. Accountability with God is awareness, truth, being known, being guided. It's Him saying, "Let me show you what's misaligned so I can draw you closer." I feel like that's so good. I want to say it again. It's Him saying, "Let me show you what's misaligned so I can draw you closer." This is not perfection. This is presence. Something else I'd like to bring up is this idea about accountability with yourself. This is the hardest one because you can't run from yourself, similarly to how you can't run from God either. However, accountability with yourself means seeing your patterns, honoring your truth. And I want to clarify the honoring your truth thing. There is only one absolute truth. What I mean is how you align yourself to your values. That is what I mean in honoring your truth, because it can be a slippery slope if you're trying to identify things as multiple truths coexisting because there's only one absolute truth. Anyway, let's get back to that. So I'll just rewind a minute. So accountability with yourself means seeing your patterns, honoring your truth. Third, not abandoning yourself, not bypassing your reality, not letting fear decide your behavior. So I just want to go over that again because I know for me sometimes it's helpful to just retouch. So I'm really looking at 5 things, subparts of what accountability with yourself looks like. Those are seeing your patterns, honoring your truth, not abandoning yourself, not bypassing your reality, not letting fear decide your behavior. So this is James teaching. The person who looks into the mirror and remembers who they are is blessed in what they do. I want to be clear, he doesn't explicitly say this, but he says what happens to somebody who forgets what they look like. So looping it back around again, the person who looks into the mirror and remembers who they are is blessed in what they do. They're committing their ways to the Lord. So what this means is you don't hide, you don't pretend. So what this means is you don't hide, you don't pretend, you don't collapse, you don't shame yourself. You come home to yourself. You say, this is what I did, this is what happened, this is what's true, and this is how I'm going to realign. Self-accountability is not self-punishment. Self-accountability is not self-punishment. It is self-honoring. Accountability with others. This is where a lot of people get uncomfortable because it requires humility, real humility. Accountability with others is not about letting people control you. It's about receiving support, correction, or reflection from people who love you and tell you the truth. Proverbs says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, meaning the loving kind of truth-telling that protects you from going the wrong way. In the Messianic Jewish context, this is community. This is havurah, walking together, sharpening one another, growing alongside each other. Accountability with others means letting someone speak truth, letting someone reflect your blind spot, letting someone hold a standard with you, letting someone encourage you when you fall. It's not about domination. It's about growth. Here's the nuance. This is my biggest thing because I feel like so many people, including myself in the past, have made this about shame. And as I mentioned just a second ago, this is the nuance. Accountability is not shame. So let's just take a second. Let's breathe into this. Accountability is not you are a problem, you're broken, You're messed up, now hide. Those are fear responses. Those are childhood wounds speaking. Real accountability sounds like you're capable of better. You're growing. Let's realign. You can correct this with grace. This mistake isn't your identity. That is so huge. How many of us have actually done that? Wear the mistake like a yoke of shame and use that to identify us. Here's the truth. Here's the real deal moment. Accountability is the truth that brings you back home. It's the truth that brings you back home. Now, I realize what I'm about to say next is likely going to sit a certain way with some folks, and that's okay. So here's something a friend of mine and I have talked about, and I've decided to make it sound a little prettier. When the veil lifts, we have awareness is now you get to make a choice. So awareness to choice. Okay? There's also a spiritual principle that matters here, and I want to address it. You're not responsible for what you don't know. But once you do know, once the veil lifts, once God reveals something, once the pattern becomes clear, you have a choice. Not a choice rooted in fear, but a choice rooted in maturity. A choice that says, now that I can see, what will I choose next? This is where accountability meets identity, where responsibility meets grace, where growth becomes possible. So when avoidance shows up, my goodness. Here's the part most people miss. Avoidance doesn't mean you're rebellious. Avoidance means you're afraid. I just got to repeat that. There's so many good things that I just feel that are so present. Avoidance doesn't mean you're rebellious. Avoidance means you're afraid. I might be jumping the gun when I say this next sentence. I wasn't planning on saying this, but this is just something that's really in my spirit right now, is that avoidance doesn't mean you're rebellious. Avoidance means you're afraid. It has to do with you being afraid with the unknown of who you're going to be when you make a different choice. And this avoidance comes from childhood patterns, unhealed wounds, fear of losing love, fear of disappointing someone, fear of being seen. I can say that's been me. Fear of being wrong. But accountability invites you out of those fears and into who God actually created you to be. This is why it matters so deeply. This is why it's worth practicing. I want to take some time to talk about what accountability feels like when it's healthy. These are some things to consider in noticing what it feels like in your body, in your mind, and your soul. It feels like clarity, dignity, groundedness, relief, alignment, ownership, maturity, and peace. Accountability is not the loss of love. Accountability is not the loss of love. It's the presence of love. So wherever you find yourself today, whether you're in a season of awareness, a season of repair, or a season of beginning again, take heart. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not defined by your past pattern or your last mistake. You are a woman learning how to stay present. You are a woman learning how to be seen. You are a woman learning how to take ownership without shame. And more importantly, you are a woman God is gently shaping, moment by moment, invitation by invitation, into the fullness of who He created you to be. Accountability is not perfection. It's alignment. It's a holy returning to yourself and to Him. My hope is that if this has helped you in some way or another, that you like, comment, subscribe, and share with someone who would benefit from this. Thank you for listening. Really, thank you. You could be anywhere, and you chose to be here. This is Lily. And this is Affirming Self. Wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, noon, or night, I hope you have a good day. Until next time.